Hey YouTube, what's going on? I'm Rocket, and this is part 2 of my Sauna HackTheBox walkthrough, where we'll be escalating our privileges from user to system. I really enjoyed the privilege escalation attack process here because we got to abuse some Windows auto-login credentials, a feature that is commonly enjoyed by Windows system administrators. We also got to see how granting too many accounts the ability to perform domain controller replication significantly increases the attack surface on your domain controller. So without further ado, let's get ready. So the first thing I like to check for is to see if our current user is part of any groups that are able to quickly escalate their privileges to a system administrator. So in this case, I will just run the whoam command with the /all flag, and we can see that we are part of the remote management users group. That is how we previously came to the conclusion that we're able to WinRM into this host. And all these other groups are just low privilege groups. We don't have any special privileges either. So moving on. The next thing I like to look for is to see what other kind of users are on this host, since it is a domain controller. So we do have administrator, public, and SBC load manager. So at this point, I just like to run the get child item command, GCI for short, and RAC for recurse, -EA for error action, and we'll just silently continue. So we silently continue, this way we suppress all errors in our output. Because, for example, if you try to recursively enumerate the administrator directory when you're not an administrator, you're going to fill up your screen with errors, and we don't really want to see that. So let's run this. And unsurprisingly, we're only able to enumerate our own directory, which we've already searched for. Okay, perfect. So at this point, I like to think situational awareness. Where are we currently? And the answer is we're on a domain controller. So whenever this happens, I like to check for identities that are able to perform domain controller replications. When you attempt to replicate a domain controller, essentially you end up dumping all Active Directory user hashes, which can then be used to authenticate on behalf of that identity. So to do this, I like to go to this site right here, Red Team Experiments. I'll share a link in the description below. And we're going to search for ACLs that have these globally unique identifiers. If we find any ACL that matches an identity, and the ACL has this globally unique identifier, then that identity will be able to perform a domain controller replication. So let's do that, and let's scroll down a little bit. So right here, we do need to import the Active Directory module, and this is so that we can get these interesting Active Directory paths and query them with the PowerShell get ACL command lit. So we'll copy that. Let's go back to the PowerShell session. Let's paste it. And now we're going to take the line below it and modify it so it suits our needs. I'll take this right here. Go back to our PowerShell session. And instead of, our domain is egotisticalbank.local. So I'll just put that right here, egotisticalbank.local. And we want the access property on the ACL. For each access property, we're going to perform a filtering. The question mark operator is kind of like the shorthand or where object in PowerShell. And we're not particularly looking for a specific identity since we want all identities to have the ability to perform a domain controller replication, so we'll just delete all this right here. And you'll notice that we want the object type to match these globally unique identifiers, where each one of these represents the ability to perform a domain controller replication. All right, so let's run that. All right, so reviewing the output, the first thing that pops out to me is this identity right here, because when we previously listed the users on this domain controller, we found SVC load manager. In short, SVC load manager is a good target to attack. So let's see if we can't escalate our privileges to administrator, or if we can't escalate our privileges to SVC load manager. At this point, I like to run some basic Windows auto-enumeration tools. My favorite tool for this is winPEAS. So I'm going to go back into the fsmith directory, go into music, and we're going to upload. By the way, upload is a evil winrm commandlet, so you can just upload a binary from your Kali Linux host onto here. Pretty neat. So let's go get that winPEAS. So here I'm just going to look for all files that end in .exe. And we'll take the x64 one. For those of you who want to be really thorough and want to know which CPU architecture you're on, you can always say env and then processor architecture. In this case, we have an AMD 64 host, so we're going to want the 64-bit executable. So I'm going to pwd here so I can get the full path. And then we're going to use evil winrm to upload it. winPEAS x. So now let's execute it. And one of the reasons why I like winPEAS so much is because it colors all of your output. And based on the color, so if the color is red, for example, you should definitely look at that object because it is likely misconfigured. If something's green, you can probably glance over it very quickly because likely it is something that is well configured, and so on and so forth. Colors make things really stand out, and so you can check for things quite fast. All right, so let's go back up. So we see Laps is not installed, which probably means the local administrator, if we do find their password, it's likely still active because there's no policy to frequently change your password. Let's quickly go over this down here. Do keep in mind you also run into many false positives. So in this case, winPEAS is saying no antivirus was detected, but at the same time, also notice that it errored out. Moving forward, we did find some auto-logon credentials, and in this case, the SBC Loan Manager's credentials are here. And one of the things about auto-login credentials is if you're a sysadmin, you'll end up modifying the registry. And one of the problems with that is the password remains in plain text. So anyone with physical access to the machine at that point can just go read this value. As convenient as it might be, if you're going to use this, do make sure that nobody has physical or remote access to your domain controller. It's something to be very careful of. Anyways, we're going to copy this and run impackets secretsdump.py. So we'll go back to Kerberos because this is a Kerberos related attack. The command to do this is secretsdump, secretsdump.py. We also need to specify the IP address of our domain controller. So our DC IP is also sauna.htb. Put the password. And we are dumping all credentials. Amazing. Let's take the administrator's NTLM hash right here. And now we can perform a pass the hash attack with evil winrm. In Windows, you can just pass a hash to authenticate. You don't particularly need the password. Let's go back to our evil winrm session. We don't need to be an SBC Loan Manager. We're just gonna run the same command, but instead of having our user be SBC Loan Manager, we're gonna log in as administrator. And instead of passing a password, we're going to pass a hash. More specifically, an NTLM hash. Let's see if we can't get in. It looks like we are administrator. So let's go to the desktop, GCI forget child item, and there's the flag. So that's a wrap up for this video, and I'll hope to see you in the next one.